Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me in this training, communication, tips and tricks, bringing awareness and intention to interaction. I am Aurelio Duarte-Encinas, a licensed counselor in the state of Arizona. Many, if not all of you, are familiar with me as we have maybe met in person or most likely talked on the phone to discuss the consumers you work with every day. In our calls, we chat about your observations, things you do to help consumers develop healthy habits, get along with one another, take their medications, or just simply help them find the capacity to relax, feel safe, and supported throughout their day. That's a lot. It's no easy task. Working with people is naturally challenging, and every interaction presents an opportunity for negotiation. As we communicate, we share our thoughts, feelings, needs, wants, and desires. Sometimes those are in conflict, and that's where awareness becomes key to figuring things out. Thinking of communication in that light can be helpful in establishing the foundation for good rapport building and problem solving. You already bring a lot of skills to the table. My intention is to bring awareness to those skills and strengths that are available to you in your efforts to communicate with the consumers you work with and beyond. Being a counselor, I think it's safe to say that many of these things I share with you today have helped me make a difference in my communication with others. You'll spend some time today exploring some aspects about physical and verbal communication, as well as awareness of some foundational skills that can help make a difference. One point about communication is to always remember that effective or successful communication is to a large degree more about us and what we do or how we respond to a situation that makes the biggest difference. I take a big picture perspective in creating my understanding of the person communicating with me and use that to guide my approach. I appreciate the investment of your time and energy and encourage you to always remember the many great things you do every day to help your colleagues and the consumers whose lives you touch. First, we're going to explore a few things to keep in mind when trying to communicate effectively with others. In addition to applying certain skills that we'll get to address later, it's a great deal of help to have a big picture perspective into the situation and everyone involved, including yourself. Kind of like the idea of building a house and starting with a solid foundation, the following topics can help you build a solid foundation of communication, upon which you'll be able to take care of your own needs and afford the other person respect and dignity, all while trying to reach a positive conclusion. Having context of the situation comes down to you having a path in mind that guides how you communicate with others and the reasons why you choose to communicate with them a certain way. Think about how you communicate differently with people who are very close to you in comparison to how you communicate with someone you have not met before. Think of what the goals are for your interaction and how they may change if you are interacting with someone very important in your life, in contrast to someone you just met briefly and will never see again. Communication can change for many reasons. Perhaps you might find yourself communicating differently between members of the same sex or opposite sex, between people who are older or younger than you. Where do you think those differences in communication come from? I think that they come in part from having a certain level of comfort, familiarity, a sense of community, obligation, and many other factors. Take a moment and contemplate how you tend to communicate with the consumers you work with on a daily basis and ask yourself what guides or influences the approach you tend to take. In gaining an understanding of the context of a particular situation, I find it useful to ask myself some simple questions and keep in mind that there may be even additional questions that may come to mind for you. It is, after all, a reflection of our cultural background, understanding of ourselves, the world around us, our values, and the objectives that we are trying to accomplish. So at a minimum, I think we can ask ourselves the following things. Who am I talking to? What needs do I know they have? What is the baseline behavior that I'm aware of? Have there been any changes recently? Have they lost someone, a supportive person? Did they lose some form of status, such as their role in the home or family? Do they have any health issues? Did they have any changes in medication? Are they using any substances, and possibly have there been any changes in their use of those substances? For example, people diagnosed with schizophrenia are vulnerable to changes in behavior if their use of nicotine changes, as it can potentially counteract with their medication. Aside from thinking about them, remember who you are to them. Are you one of the only supportive and caring people in their life? With that understanding, how do your choices, decisions, and behaviors affect them? How do they perceive you within the context of their life, their beliefs, and perceptions? Right or wrong, looking at the world through their eyes. Next, we move on to beyond recognizing that there is a need to address and bring our attention to how we observe others and the way that they are communicating with us, as well as how we are responding to that interaction. This is helpful because, frankly, there isn't much progress going to be made if two people are angry or activated by a situation. As much as humanly possible, it is important to ground ourselves, and having context of that will help us be aware of everything happening beneath the surface and at the surface. If we have context, we know the interaction with someone at work will only last so long because we ultimately get to go home at some point. They may not, or in the case of Sonoran Sky consumers, they largely don't get to. They don't get to go anywhere else, besides the day program, for instance. With that in mind, take a moment to take in awareness of what you see, what you hear, and what you feel. What do you notice of the other person? What do you notice going on within yourself? What are the thoughts, emotions, physical sensations, images, behaviors that come up in the situation? What does the other person share, or what can you notice about them related to the in-the-moment experience? There is a lot to observe here, and you can't catch everything, but try to be aware. Capture changes in emotions, such as does their face turn red, or do they look like they want to cry? Does it look like their breathing is changing in some way? Are they holding their breath or starting to breathe at a fast rate? Do you notice any tension in their muscles? Or does it look like they are ready to collapse upon themselves, looking small, not sitting, or standing up like normal? What are their eyes doing? Are they blinking, looking away, or staring right at you? How is their speech? Louder? Softer? Slower? Faster? Is the rhythm changing? Are the words they are using different than what they normally use? Are they not needing to stand, sit, move? Or does it look like they have checked out and are just kind of not there? Are you noticing these things for yourself? Be aware of all these things for yourself. For example, you may be talking to somebody and feel the need to move. You may not want to because it's just an uncomfortable situation, but not necessarily something where you feel that you are in danger. But having awareness of this may help remind you to breathe, be aware of your surroundings, be aware of the distance between you and the person, and make choices that will help support you in the process. It may also have the effect in helping the other person too. You can always say, "What you're saying is very important to me. I will feel more comfortable if I sit down over here. Is that all right?" Sometimes just conveying that to somebody else may slow down the process, convey to them that you care about what they have to communicate to you, and provide them an invitation to possibly be more comfortable as well. There is no right or wrong here as long as you are checking in and trying to do things that will help support both of you. As you talk with people, also be aware of your own sensitive or vulnerable spots. What buttons can they push? Some people will find them and they'll push them. What things can people say, do, or behave that pushes those buttons? Be aware of these things, because if they are pushed and you take things personally, they'll likely only serve in getting in the way from having improved communication. I believe that within a professional setting, the best recourse is to try to not take it personally, But if it is something that must be addressed, then taking it to your superiors and administration. However, in the moment, practicing letting go and focusing on the meat of the matter is sometimes more beneficial and practical. Sometimes people will try to push buttons because they do not know how to express themselves and advocate for themselves. Sometimes it has nothing to do with that. Either way, acknowledging that your buttons have been pushed will likely lead to unproductive results. Ever enter a room and feel like you could cut the tension with a knife? How about enter a room with a group of people and just know that something big was just shared or something just happened without anyone needing to tell you about it? Our brain is responsible for many things. Parts of our brain, nervous system, nerve networks, tissue, and probably billions of cells all working together and billions more pieces of information that we're consciously not aware of, but become part of the felt experience or provide that context of our experience within the moment. One highly significant thing is that we are able to tap into that and have a deeper level of something that is happening. We're also able to share some of that experience with others. For example, under the right circumstances, maybe just looking at someone in the eyes for the smallest moment may produce a smile in both of you, or maybe some tears. Within the scope of our time today, as you gain awareness of how you are responding to a situation in the moment, and you take a course of action to help yourself feel more comfortable, like adjusting your body, moving one step closer or away from the person, moving to the side, gaining awareness of your breathing, and focusing on having a slow and steady breath. That helps regulate the brain, the body, and the nervous system of people around you, too. Ever talk to somebody who was upset and through your own calm voice, steady assurance, and projected confidence were able to help them feel more calm and capable of having an actual conversation rather than a shouting match? I am sure you've had some experiences that are similar to that in nature. Curious about if this does really apply to your situation? Well, our behavior does have an effect on others, and research by Dr. Stephen Porges shows that two physiological systems do affect one another, or in other words, they co-regulate. If someone has ever told you that you have a calming presence, that is an example of what we're talking about. One powerful tool is to remember that. As you model appropriate, helpful, and desirable physical behaviors, and promote the same kind of response internally, you'll be helping the people you're interacting with do the same, knowingly or not. As you model helpful verbal behaviors as well, it'll have the same effect. You're both part of a system at that point, and the footwork on the dance floor may not be as smooth or skillful as the dancers you see here, but any bit of coordination does help.